Hey y'all, it's time for my October reading wrap up. So while I know most of you were out there spending October reading all of the spooky things, all of the horror and all of the thrillers and the slashers, my October was basically the month of Will Trent. Now, yes, I consider the Will Trent series written by Karin Slaughter basically to be like a combination of thriller and like psychological thriller, I guess. I discovered the Will Trent series, I want to say it must have been earlier this year when I was listening to a ton of audiobooks and I was at my other job. So I was driving to Dallas and every single day, and I would be in the car anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day between dropping my son off at school, driving to Dallas, and then driving home. Some days I would even have appointments with clients else at their home or at their office or whatever. And so I would be in the car even longer. So I was listening to a ton of audiobooks, and one that I just happened to pick up that was available from my library was book 10 of the Will Trent series. And I did not realize at the time that it was number 10 in a series. So I listened to that, way back at the beginning of the year. I want to say maybe like February. And then I decided that I was going to start from the beginning of the series. But before I did that, I wanted to go even further back with some of those characters and read the Grant County series that Karin Slaughter had written. So I read all 6, I think, of those books, and then I started over with Will Trent. So I have been knocking them out, and I'm up to, I think I'm through book 8, with a couple of novellas thrown in here and there. So I'm waiting for book 9 from my library. And then since I've already read book 10, I only need to finish book 11 from there. So 9 and 11, and then I'll be caught up. And then I have to wait like 2 years for her to write the next one. And what the heck am I supposed to do in the meantime? I don't know, maybe work on this bookshelf that's right over here in the corner that is almost entirely full of books I haven't read. It's just a thought. Anyway, since I am rambling on about Will Trent, I don't actually have any of the books here. Most of them I have read on my Kindle, so as per, I will try to put them, the book covers up here if I can find them. So let's just go ahead and go through. The first Will Trent book that I read this month was Broken, and that was number 4. So just a quick synopsis. Will Trent is a detective. He works for the GBI, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. It is just like the FBI is on the federal level, but GBI is for the state of Georgia. I would imagine every state has them, but Karin Slaughter does base all of her books in and around Georgia. Sometimes the characters will, in their investigations, they might go down to Florida or to Alabama to, investigate a person or a crime scene or something like that. But the main events of her stories all take place in the state of Georgia. And so Will Trent is a detective with the GBI. He is dating Dr. Sarah Linton, who is, she is a pediatrician and an ER doctor, and in her former life, she had been the medical examiner for a small county. So she has tons of knowledge, not just, your regular medical knowledge, but she knows a lot about forensics and forensic science and things like that. So she very often gets involved in the cases and can kind of see things from that lens as well. So she can add to sort of the narrative of what happened in a particular crime. So I started out with book number 4, that was Broken. And then I moved on to book number 5, which was Fallen. I then read book number 6, which is called Criminal. Then I had to take a half a step back, and I actually read Snatched, which is a novella. It's technically called book number 5.5. It's supposed to take place in the months in between books 5 and books 6. So I did read that one a little bit out of order. And then I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one here, but I listened to an audiobook called Cleaning the Gold. It is a Jack Reacher and Will Trent kind of crossover. So it's labeled as Jack Reacher 23.6 and Will Trent 8.5. So technically it takes place after the book that I just finished, because I just finished book 8 a couple days ago. But I feel like it can probably be read at any time. It was a really quick novella. Let me see. If you were reading it, it's 129 pages, but I listened to it and I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 hours. It doesn't take place anywhere in like the normal scenery of the Will Trent series. He's on a special assignment and he's going undercover. So that was Will Trent 8.5. And it is it was penned with Karen Slaughter and Lee Child, who writes, I guess, the Jack Reacher series. Don't know why that word was so hard for me. Okay. After that, I finished up the month reading on my Kindle again the Will Trent book Unseen, which is Will Trent number 7. Now I did kind of just spoil myself because I think the day before yesterday I finished number 8, but I'll talk about that in November, since technically I finished it in November. But yeah, so I felt like it was very much the month of Will Trent. I loved all of the books. I really love Will as a character. He is incredibly intelligent, and she always writes him as a character who's highly intelligent, but he has like zero self-esteem. He looks down on himself. He was raised in the foster care system in Georgia. So he was, moved about from house to house and family to family. And he also is dyslexic. And so that is a secret that he tries to hide from everyone. And so it's a really interesting, it's really great to see how he is so successful, and he is really, really smart, but he has this one trait about him that he's so incredibly insecure about, that he cannot see all of these other wonderful things about him. And so it's really nice to see him from Dr. Sarah Linton's perspective, where she's just like, he's phenomenal. He's so smart. He's, really just this incredibly compassionate person. It's really nice to kind of see the two of them and how they sort of play off of each other, and how they really, really complement each other. So that's really cool to see. And of course, it is primarily thriller, so it does sometimes get very graphic about the crime scene or different different ways that the victims are tortured in the story. And so sometimes I'm reading and I'm going, oh my God, where does she come up with these things, But then there is this, this other part of the story that is I would say equally as important is watching the character development and their relationship develop. So yeah, really, really nice balance of the two of those. Definitely thriller, and you get that aspect of it, but then you also get the undercurrents of the romance in it as well. So love that series. Like I said, I'm almost caught up. I only have 2 books left to go in the series to get to where she's at right now. Book number 11 just came out over the summer, so I have no idea. I'm going to have to wait 2 years until she releases her next one, so I can't take it. Karen, write faster. Okay, moving on from Will Trent. Oh, I did actually read, I read another Karen Slaughter book because, yes, I am obsessed. I read another Karen Slaughter book this month as well. It's called The Good Daughter. And in The Good Daughter, we follow an attorney. She is a criminal defense attorney. And so we follow her as she, as she is like trying to crack this case. And she actually ends up like, as I understand, is not uncommon for criminal defense attorneys. They make a lot of enemies. They don't exactly deal with the fine, upstanding citizens of society. And so while she is trying to sort of solve this case and defend her client, it also talks about the different struggles that she has in her personal life and, just like staying safe and the dangers that she, that she is subject to as a criminal defense attorney. So that one was also really, really good. That is the first in a series. So I've started another series here. Next, I read The Summer Place, and this is by Jennifer Weiner. I think it's Jennifer Weiner or Jennifer Weiner. She writes all of these stories about the Cape, Cape Cod, and being on the Cape in the summer. And this was a really cool book about, this was another one that I think I listened to. Yes, I listened to this on audiobook. And this was a book about, it starts out like the narrative is from the perspective of the house. So this family has gone to their summer house on the Cape every year since, like the main character was a little kid. And it talks about the different changes in the different generations of the family. Really, really sweet book, and also a little bit messy, like this person has secrets and then this person has secrets and there's miscommunication, and but really sweet to see kind of how like it all resolves in the end, and of course everyone lives happily ever after, and that was a really nice book as well. I think I gave that 4 stars, 3.5 or 4 stars. Okay, next, we have one of only 2 physical books that I actually read this month. And I'm a little bit bummed because I, as you know, have had this challenge called Finish It in Fall. And I was really trying to, like when I looked at my Goodreads list a couple of months ago, I had all these books that I had started, but either I lost interest or I, like a couple of them were library loans and the loan ran out and I couldn't renew it, so I had to return it to the library. But I had all these books that I had started and I just never finished them. So I was really trying to get through these books that I had started. I finished one. And it was by sheer willpower that I finished this book because, let me tell you, I didn't like any part of it. It was The Paris Apartment. I hated this book. Okay, so here's the deal. Lucy Foley is a no-go for me. This is now the 3rd book of hers. The first one I read on my Kindle, so I've experienced her 3 different ways now. The first one I read on my Kindle, it was the guest list, and I was like, okay, I didn't love all of the like snippets of stories and then everything comes together in like the last 30 pages. But for that story, I felt like it worked. So for me, at the end of it, I would say the ends justified the means. Then for Daisy Darker was the second one, and I listened to that one on audiobook, and I kind of clued in, I would say pretty early, what the, like, what the twist was. And I just didn't love that one. I mean, it was supposed to be, what's the Agatha Christie? And then There Were None. I think it's supposed to be like a, not a retelling necessarily, but like a copy of, inspired by, shall we say. And then There Were None. And I just didn't love it. I mean, it was all right, but I'm pretty sure I gave it like a 3-star. And then this one. This was the Paris Apartment. I knew what was, I knew it was going on the entire time. I didn't like any of the characters in the book at all. Even our protagonist, could not stand her. She made terrible decisions. She felt like people owed her. She was basically like a loser. She couldn't keep a job. She ran off and like just quit her job, and she kept acting like the police were after her when like there was no story to support that really. And she just wasn't likable. And I can deal with an unlikable narrator, right? Like I can deal with that. I don't love it because I want to at least root for the person that, like you want them all to live happily ever after. But I didn't like any of these people. They were all terrible humans, and none of them really had any redeeming qualities. And so I just felt like the story dragged, and it was ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous, and I did not enjoy it at all. I think I gave it 2 stars. It wasn't even that long. How many pages was this? 356. I think it could have been about 280. Honestly, I did not care for this at all. And that is the only one. And I mean, I think I've started reading that back in like July or August or something, and it literally took me that long. I would go weeks at a time without picking it up because I just didn't like it, and I didn't like want to know what happened next. You know what I mean? So, yeah, did not care for that one at all. What did we listen to next? Okay, then I had a bunch more audiobooks. So the first one, Charlotte's Web. I did not intentionally, I didn't go seeking after this just to like get my book count up, or anything like that. But a lot of times if I'm at work, I will just see what's available as an audiobook. I'm on a special project right now, so I can like pick the times when I need to be in a meeting or when I have to make phone calls or things like that. So most of my day is spent like literally just sitting at my desk doing work on my computer. I'm not really interacting with a lot of people. I'm not sitting in meetings with clients. And I have a lot of just time to work on my computer. So what I like to do when I'm doing that is I really like to listen to audiobooks. And so most of the time I'll just see what's available, and Charlotte's Web was available at my library, so I listened to it, and it was so sweet. And I remember loving it as a kid. Obviously it is a classic. It was really quick. I think it was maybe like 4 hours. I can't quite remember, but it was just like feel good, and it was just everything that you remember as a kid. It did have a foreword by E.B. White, and then it had an afterword by, I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but basically he was talking, I think it was like maybe his editor or his publisher or something, and it was like republished with this afterword by the publisher or by the editor or whoever he was, in honor of like the 30th anniversary or 50th anniversary or something like that. Anyways, it was really, really sweet. And of course, I mean, who doesn't love Charlotte's Web, right? Next, I listened to If He Had Been With Me. And this was another one that was pretty predictable. I think this is a YA. Again, I listened to it, so I'll have to put the picture here. But this follows a couple of teenagers. So they're like boy-girl besties. They grew up together. Their families were really close. They lived next door to each other. And then as they get to like middle school and high school, right, they both go to different crowds. So like this one is with the preppy crowd, and then the girl goes to this like kind of outcast crowd and sort of makes her own clique. And so of course we find out, toward the end of the book, like one of them has been pining after the other their whole lives. And it's sweet, but it's very predictable. Like the girl ends up being in kind of a controlling relationship with a boy, and it's totally obvious from like a grown person listening to this story from the outside in. But of course she is just like, oh, he loves me. He's, we're going to be together forever. So it was predictable. It was entertaining, I guess, but I gave it a 3-star. I don't think that I was maybe the target audience. I do think it was more like a YA. But again, it was something that was available, and I had seen it on a ton of people's like Bookstagram, and I've seen it all over Facebook and stuff. So I didn't know anything about it going in. I just saw that it was available and I listened to it. So it was fine. It was entertaining. Like I said, I think, 3.5 stars. All right, 2 more. The first one, I had this as a physical book. So I did actually read a second physical book this month, but it was a library book, and so I had to turn it back in. I think I actually dropped it at the library yesterday because we had book club last Friday, and our book choice for this month was Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. The book is not super long. I think it was like maybe 280 pages. It is a Hercule Poirot one in his series, and so he's the detective, and the book was good. I've only read one other in his series, which was Murder on the Orient Express. I think that's a Poirot book. I've read a couple of Miss Marple. My parents were super strict growing up, so I had like very limited books or genres, I should say, that I could actually read from. So Agatha Christie somehow was okay. And obviously this is an older book. It was written in a different time. It was written in a different country. I think these take place in like the UK somewhere. And so the culture is obviously a little bit different, but it was really, the book was really interesting. I didn't think that I was going to be able to read it at first because very quickly you find out who it is. I'm going to go ahead and just say like very mild spoilers here. But pretty quickly within like the first chapter, I think maybe the second chapter, you find out who is murdered. And it's at a Halloween party for kids. And so this 13-year-old girl gets murdered. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to handle this. But then throughout the rest of the book, all these people are talking shit about this 13-year-old girl. They're saying like, she was a liar. She would do anything to get attention. She never told the truth. She was a nasty girl. She didn't have any friends. And like all of us in book club are like, what is wrong with these people? She's a 13-year-old girl and she's dead, like what? Why are you being so terrible? But I finished reading it and it was entertaining. As I have found with the few Agatha Christie books that I have read, is that like by the time you get to where he's like, aha, I have it, I've solved the mystery, like he's picking things out that were never mentioned anywhere in the book. So he's like putting together all these clues that you as the reader were never given. So there's no way, to me, there's no way if you like read along and you're trying to solve the mystery as a participant in the book, you might come to the same conclusion, but it's not going to be because of the same clues, because I had kind of an idea of who was involved, but I never, ever, ever would have guessed that it was because of this person and this person and this history that had happened years ago, because you're not given that history. So she kind of like pulls a fast one on you, which I have kind of remember from those that I read when I was a teenager. So, like I said, it was entertaining, but it was just okay for me. And the last one that I finished that was not a Will Trent book was Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This was such a roller coaster ride of a book. When we started out, I did not care for our protagonist. She was kind of this like stoner person who didn't have, had like dropped out of college and had all this potential and like never made anything of herself. She was working at like the grocery store or the drugstore or something like that, which fine, those are good and honorable professions, but she was doing it because it was easy and she didn't want to have to put any effort into anything. And then she gets a phone call from a long lost friend that she's kind of sort of stayed in touch with, and she says she's got this assignment for her that she needs to like drop her life and come. And it really ends up being a nice story about like found family and, giving people second chances and not taking people at face value, and how like people can have lovely homes and lovely lives on the outside, but, there's so much going on underneath that, we know nothing about. And so it ended up being a really good story. I know tons and tons of people who just really loved it. And I did end up enjoying it as well. Even though I wasn't crazy about the protagonist at the beginning, I did end up appreciating her. I do think she kind of like grew up and matured and had a little bit of a change of heart at the end as well. So those are how many did I count? 14 books that I read in the month of October. Holy cow. Yes, I'm going to try to be better about posting my TBRs and then my wrap-ups. I know I've missed a couple of months here and there, so I'm going to be trying to be better about it. But in the meantime, if you want to, see more about what I've been reading or what I plan to read, I will leave a playlist as well. Maybe I'll try to link that up here somewhere if I can. Check out all my links down below. I've got my Goodreads list, so you can always see what I'm reading there. I have my Instagram. I'm way better about keeping track on my Instagram, posting there every couple of days versus like sitting down and doing, a whole video. I have a Book of the Month referral link down below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support this channel in a monetary way. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.